This is Rick Hall in Studio B of the Letcher County Government Channel, and I am with...
My real name is Wilburn Hall, Jr., but I picked up a nickname, Jimmy Hall, through the family when I was a little boy. So everybody that I went to school with, went to college, and taught school, know me as Wilburn. But all of my family and the people in the church, which is a great number of people, they know me as Brother Jimmy Hall. So I told them I'll answer to about anything 3 times a day if I'm hungry. So I was born July 25th, 1939, in a place called McRoberts, Kentucky, and lived in Kansas City Row. Now, in Kansas City Row, at the end of it was a lower building school, McRoberts Lower Building. And this was grades 1 through 6. So I was close enough that I could walk to school, and I could also walk home for lunch and back, had plenty of time. We didn't have a cafeteria in the school at that time. So after completing the 6th grades, then on Band Mill Hill in McRoberts was the upper building of McRoberts School. And for some reason, we had the 7th grade, 8th grade, and the 9th grade. And I think probably my class would have been the last class that was a freshman at McRoberts instead of being in the Jenkins High School. After that, then they started transporting the freshmen along with the sophomores, juniors, and seniors to Jenkins. So anyway, I have a lot of friends that I remember that lived in that area. One that's went off and worked and moved back here is James Scott, Jimmy Scott. And we grew up together from little bitty boys and became men, and I guess now we're becoming old men. So we'll just travel right along through life.
For our viewers, especially in the McRoberts area that do not remember, explain to me what McRoberts was like then when you were growing up as compared to today.
Well, it was fabulous back then, Rick. People don't realize it, but we had a recreation building. And in the big recreation building, when it's been torn down now for several years, in the basement you had a pool hall, and then on the middle floor you had what they called a fountain. They had a jukebox. They would serve hamburgers, milkshakes, and Cokes. And then in the main top was a theater. As a matter of fact, when I was a little boy, I remember seeing Gone with the Wind in that theater at McRoberts. And the company also had a meat market, and they had a grocery store. They had clothing, they had furniture, and they also had a swimming pool. And this was a great thing, and it had a huge building connected with it, and they had a jukebox in it. And we would have Saturday night pool parties as teenagers. You could go swimming, and you could dance, and there was just a lot of things for kids to do back then. And now we thought we really didn't have anything to do, comparing ourselves with like New York City or someplace. But we didn't realize how well off we were and how good we had it. And I'm sure that a lot of my friends, that they had to leave. Most people did. I attended the University of Kentucky, and I started there in 1958. Probably this was the year that UK basketball team won the national championship. And Johnny Cox from Hazard, who had helped Hazard win the state championship in 1955, was playing there, and he was an All-American, and I got acquainted with him. And they called this group the Fiddlin' Five. They didn't win all their games, and they would get behind and, as they say, fiddle around and come back and win it. So they wasn't a team picked to come anywhere close to winning the NCAA that year. Another fascinating fact to me I don't know how this happened, but you had some guys from back here on football scholarships and so forth. And I had ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps. It was kind of a requirement. So in my class, I was in the class, I was the only one in that class that wasn't attending the University of Kentucky on a football scholarship. I guess they wondered how I got one, if that's what they were trying to do, is put all the football players in there, because I was pretty small. But I remember Harry Johnson was a good friend of mine, played for Fleming Neon. And he kind of helped take care of me. I came in one time and I'd forgot to shine my brass. And he was getting a cloth and trying to shine my brass for me to help me out. Because if you got a demerit, you had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the cold winter months and go and march it off.
Ooh. And
then come back and go to class. But it was a fascinating time, and going to the football games, I think that stadium then held like 20-some thousand. That was a large group back then. I think it's hold 50,000 now. But it was just tremendous, and you'd have all your big politicians there, Happy Chandler, and I had a lot of good friends. James Gray attended down there with me, David Howard, and so it was the best time of your life. If there's any high school students, grade school, college, whatever, you don't know it right now, but you're living the best days of your life. There's nothing that could ever replace being able to go to school and study. And I know it's hard, it's challenging, and you feel like you're having to work too hard. But you're exempt from all the problems of life that you're going to face later on. So enjoy it and get all the education you can. And I would advise people today to especially get all the education they can in computers, because that is the now, present, and the future, looks to me like, in this world.
I want to go back and talk about some other things, but we'll continue on this lineage. After you got out of the University of Kentucky, what did you do?
Well, after I got out of the University of Kentucky, I went there 1 year,
Mm-hmm.
and so I decided that was going to back up and go. I attended a Lee's College down in Jackson, Kentucky. Donnie Skaggs was a good friend of mine that went down there with me, and several others that hard to remember them all now. And then I finished up at Pikeville College, and then I applied for a job teaching school in the Jenkins school system. I remember going to the Board of Education and talking to them, and the next day I got a call that I'd been hired. Now, the first job that I got, for about the first month, I was teaching the 5th grade at the Lower McRoberts School Building.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 21,
Mm-hmm.
so I was still pretty young. Of course, the 5th graders thought I was old. You know how that goes. But in just about a month, they called me over to the high school, and they wanted me to come over there and teach. I taught English, math, and science. I was the head of the science department. And also, they needed a school bus driver. So I said, well, I've helped my uncles in stores that have trucks that we would go haul watermelons and peaches and so forth. So I had some experience, so I took up driving the school bus. And I drove for the band, I drove for the football team, the basketball team, and that was a lot of fun too. And as a matter of fact, I wasn't married then, so I kept the school bus at McRoberts. When I got through with my run, I would haul them up to Dunham first, and then get the McRoberts kids and take them. And when I got through, I just parked it there at the house. I lived with my parents that first year. So that was a lot of saving money too. You'd get up in the mornings and get the school bus and go, and you never had to use your own car. So it was quite fascinating. And I really enjoyed those years at Jenkins. We had a lot of good teachers. We had a lot of good students, and it seemed like they were really interested in and trying to learn. I remember one guy, Teddy Pass, a lot of you might remember Teddy went on and made a doctor, I believe. And he talked to me a little bit, and I was explaining to him about what you needed to get into college. And so he was really pleased with that. And I helped Coach Morgan, was the football coach then. And he and I were good friends, so I kind of helped him. I wasn't on the payroll for coaching or anything, but I helped Coach Morgan quite a bit with scouting, and so it was a lot of fun. Made a lot of friends, and of course I had as many friends at Fleming Neon. But see, living in McRoberts, there was a place called Tucker's in Fleming Neon, and it was real famous. It stayed open like till 3 o'clock in the morning, like on Friday and Saturday nights.
Wow!
And that's where everybody congregated and had a jukebox. And a lot of people will remember Nicky Dan. He was 6'5" and big old boy, and he was about that when he was 13, 14 years old. And so we were in there and had enough money to buy some hot dogs and a Coke, and they had a thing right there at your booth that you could put money in and play the jukebox from there. You didn't have to walk up to the jukebox. And Nick said, well, I got a quarter left. I think I'll play us some songs. You could play, I think, 6 for a quarter or something like that. But it got jammed in there, and he was a big old boy with big hands, and he went wham, and he busted the thing. He said, not only lost my quarter, I'm going to have to buy a new piece here. I said, well, it'll get better tomorrow, Nick. So, but Nick was one that went on and played football for UK too, and the last I heard, he's living down in Florida. So what else do we need to know?
Well, let's shift gears here for a moment. Tell me about your parents.
My parents were Wilburn Hall, thus I'm Wilburn Hall Jr., and Emma Tackett Hall. My dad's parents were Willard and Uni Hall. As a matter of fact, when she was born, she had 5 aunts that were there, and they all wanted her named after. So they called her Uni, but her real name was Eunice Emily Murky Melindy Jane Hall.
How do you remember that?
So it was easier to remember Uni, so they called her Uni. And my mother's mother, my grandmother, was Hannah Tackett, and she was a Tackett and married James Irvin Tackett, my grandfather. So my mother was a full-blooded Tackett, well, still is. She'll be 98 years old September 16th. And so her mother died when she was 10 years old. And she had 3 brothers, Eddie, Conley, and Lacey. Eddie was the oldest, and my mother Emma was next, and then Conley and then Lacey. And they were kind of orphans. Now, my grandfather was in the saw logging business, and he made a lot of money, and he built a huge home on Long Fork down in Pike County at Virgie. And he had a big carbide lamp thing put in, battery thing put in out there. He was the only home for miles that had electricity. And this was a long time ago because her mother died in 1922. And she was born in 18. Anyway, she was only 33 years old when she died. They had wood floors and a big wood porch, and she was in the cold weather barefooted out to scrubbing and cleaning on the porch. And some way they said she caught a quick type of tuberculosis, TB they called it. And she only lived a few months, and it was really, really a hard thing because she loved her children, she loved her husband, she loved her home, and really it was, well, I'll get into this a little bit if you want me to.
Sure.
She had a friend of hers that stayed with her, and one night about 3 o'clock in the morning, Rick, she passed by Hannah's door, and Hannah was down on her knees praying, saying, Lord, I know that I have to go. She was a Christian. She was a member of the old Long Fork Old Regular Baptist Church. Lord, I know I have to go, but God, I want you to bless my children. I want you to bless them in this life. I want you to bless them to be a Christian. And I want you to bless my husband and bless him, Lord, to be a Christian before he dies, that I can meet them all in heaven someday. So time went on. She passed away. Well, when my mother was 19 years old, she joined the church, the Old Regular Baptist. So she's been in church 78 years. Anyway, I think the next one was Eddie. He joined. And then Conley joined. And this was after that I became a minister, when the baby one, Lacey, joined. And I baptized him. And that made all of them Christians at that time except my grandfather. And he was 83 years old. But I felt like he'd been praying, and I talked to him about it. And so one Sunday, I looked up and saw this 83-year-old body slowly get up and begin to come forth. And he gave his hand to the church and was baptized. So that made all of the children that come in. Now, bless them in this life, Lord. Well, they all got into the wholesale candy business, and Eddie and my grandfather had a big wholesale candy business in the Pike County area. They served Florida County, Knott County, Letcher County, Pike County. So Eddie, we made it real good. It made real good money. Well, Conley got into the market business, and he made real good money. And Lacey, he got into the market business over at Feds Creek the first time. And he had a big store there at the mouth of Feds Creek till he retired. And my mother, we got into the market business in Dorton, Kentucky, called the H&H Market. So there he not only blessed them all to be Christians, he blessed them all to have wealth and happiness in this life. And so if you're praying out there, don't give up, because you never know. These prayers are bottled up in heaven. And I believe that one was answered, and it was just amazing, because I think Grandpa had a third grade education. But he was selling candy about the time that cash registers and adding machines came out. And he had so much talent. He was so gifted in figures. And he would go and he would put an order up, and they'd say, "Give that out to me on the adding machine, and I'll add it up." He said, "Well, here, you add it up." And he gave them the total. They were about halfway through. He gave them the total, and they said, "By golly, that's right." So he was just something else. If he'd have had a real education and more opportunities, it's untelling what he would have accomplished in life. But, people's lives are fascinating, and good things happen and bad things happen. There they were, children going around, and I remember them saying they didn't know where they were going to stay that night. And they'd got breakfast somewhere. They didn't know where they were going to get their next meal. But my grandfather's mother, they called her Granny Becky. She took them and raised them till they got up big enough to get out and start working and go on their own. And Eddie and Conley didn't serve in the war, but Lacey served in World War II, and he got all kinds of medals. He was wounded, and he told me the story. They had took this hill, and they were surrounded by the Japanese, and they were trying to come up on them. And out of 100, there was only about 24 of them left. And the radio man had been shot. And he said, I had to take the radio from him. I was next in line to do that. And him begging me to stay, but said I had to get it and go on. And he said, I radioed the ships out at sea. And they was just maybe hundreds of them starting to try to come up. And we were running out of ammunition. And he called and gave them the coordinates and said, boys, if you ever done anything for anybody in your life, said, do it for us now. And he said the shells began to fly. And he carried that radio a long way after he was wounded. And he said, that was just my luck, son. Said, that was the last battle of the war. Said it was over and I had to get wounded there. And so he spent time in the hospital in France and came back. And that's when he started working on candy trucks and eventually got into the market business.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your life here in eastern Kentucky. I understand that you have done a lot of different things. You were teaching school. Now, when you were teaching school, name me some of the teachers that you taught with that you remember, and name me some of the students that our viewers might know that you taught.
Okay, well, Dave L. Kraft was principal then, and Lee Garrett Johnson was superintendent. And of course, there was Coach John Morgan, and I believe there was a Coach Ed Miracle, and if I'm not mistaken, Henry Ed Wright and Rita. Now, Henry Ed might have been at Fleming Neon and Rita at Jenkins, but I knew those two before they got married. Remember when they started dating?
Wow. And
Sally Fugit, which she married Sam Webb, and Sam died of cancer, and she's married again. She's still around. And of course, Miss Vanover, the typing teacher, and she passed away a few years ago. And Jack Neese from down in Letcher, he taught there, and I'm probably going to leave some out. There was a Coach McKenzie that came here from Oklahoma, and he was a huge man, and he coached here, and he went on, and he coached in college some, but then wasn't too long he died with a heart attack.
Now, was Jimmy Bentley here at that time?
Jimmy Bentley was he was starting out as a math teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now Charlie Dixon hadn't started yet. I went to college with him at Pikeville, and he was still in college. Probably the next year after I left, he started teaching there. And there was a Jim Summers that was a basketball coach, and he had leukemia, and he had to have blood ever so often. He got sick one time, and I went in and gave a pint of blood for him, and he said, I'll be all right now. Wilburn gave me some of his blood.
Well, now, I know some of the students that you've had. I know Wayne Fleming has talked about you, and Thurman Hall is another one that's mentioned you as a teacher.
Thurman's told this to everybody. There might be one person out there somewhere that hasn't heard this story. Well, Fleming Neon, Whitesburg, and Jenkins was playing. We were playing at Jenkins. So Thurman was having a hard time in math class. I said, Thurman, get me 16 unassisted tackles, and I'll give you an A. Well, he played like a wild man, and he was only a freshman or sophomore, but he was still a big old boy. And they beat Whitesburg 65-0. Thurman got 13 unassisted tackles. Now, he was in on a lot more tackles than that, but he got 13 unassisted. And he laughs every time, said, then Mr. Hall gave me an A-.
Now, if he hadn't have got those tackles, what would his grade have been?
Probably a C+.
Oh, goodness gracious. You did give him a break, didn't you?
Well, yeah, we were negotiating. But I mentioned Teddy Pass and Johnny Wayne Lequar. A lot of people might remember him. It's hard right off the spot to remember all of them.
Oh, but I don't expect you to. Just a few that you might remember.
Wayne and Thurman too. Louis Figure, he's passed on now. He was one, and
now, you were pretty close in age to these individuals, weren't you?
Yeah, I was 21 when I started, and some of them were 18, 19 as seniors. I'm trying to think. It's just hard to remember all the names, but...
Let me ask you this. Now, a lot of people of your particular generation had a lot of brothers and sisters. Did you have any brothers and sisters?
No, I was raised an only child, And when people say, how come you were the only child? I say, well, my parents got it right the first time. They didn't have to try anymore. That's just my way of getting out of it. But
Well, now, I know you mentioned the grocery store. What did your father do?
Dad worked for Bethlehem. He worked for Consolidation Coal Company and Bethlehem Steel. And he was the lamp house man. He took care of all their battery lights and so forth and kept them charged up and cleaned. And I can remember him coming home with his hands where the acid, big old cracks in his hands. But he went inside maybe a few times, but most of the time that he was the lamp house man. And he kept all the lights, seemed to get along real good with everybody. He worked at McRoberts, and then he worked over at Dean after the McRoberts mine kind of went out.
Well, how long did you teach school at Jenkins?
I taught 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
And then what did you do?
Well, then I decided I wanted to make a little more money. So instead of renewing up for teaching, I put my application in to work for Bethlehem Steel. I didn't hear anything, so I went up to Cincinnati. And some of you might remember some of my wife's brothers, Sandra Hall. Larry Phil Mullins was up there, and Dennis Mullins. And of course, she had 7 brothers. She was the only daughter. So I had to really be nice to her. And there was Curtis and Winston and Billy Mullins, who is with insurance now down at Whitesburg, CS&W. And Rodney, he's passed away, and Curtis and Winston's passed away. And Bobby, the oldest, is in Indiana. So they all moved away from here, most of them, but Rodney still stayed around, and Billy stayed around, and Dennis came back after he retired out of the Navy and set up a tax business, which I think he's about retired from it now. But he worked for the IRS in Washington, so he could help a lot of people that were having problems with their taxes. So we stayed with Larry Field up there, and I was looking for a job. And a lot of people remember Gary Harrison. He graduated the year after I did. He led the state in scoring in football, had scholarships to Tennessee and Indiana and Kentucky. And his dad wanted him to go to Kentucky, but Gary wasn't real big, but he was a really good ball player, finesse, and it was hard to catch him and tackle him. And he led the state in scoring over Red Hill from Fleming Neon, which was quite a feat. And I read some of the articles. He was a freshman at University of Indiana, and it said Gary Harrison, one of the most promising freshmen that they'd had in a long time. And he was dating a girl from Whitesburg. And I'll think of her name in a minute. I can't remember it right now. But they were really, really serious, and Gary, I don't think, was going to continue on in school. She was going to Union College, and they'd broke up. So Gary and I, being real good friends, I said, I'll go down and talk to her. So I took a weekend off and went down to Union College and talked to her. She was dating a baseball pitcher. So we talked and talked and talked, and finally she decided to call Gary, and they got back together and got married. And so when I went up to Cincinnati, we lived with Larry Field, but then Gary came out, found I was there, and we went out to his house and lived. He got me a job working where he was working. I don't know exactly the title or anything, but what they did, they put the glossy finishing touches on the front of the magazine covers, and you had machinery that you run it through, and so that's what I did there. And then I got a call from back in Jenkins, Kentucky. I believe it was Mr. Childers that called me, and saying they wanted me to come back. They wanted to talk to me at Beth Elkhorn. And of course, I was still real young, about 23, 24. And I said, well, I said, I looked for a job and I found one. Do I have a job? And he said, well, we're not allowed to say anything like that. And I said, well, I'm working now. I hate to leave. And he said, you probably could assume that real heavy. So I said, okay. And so I came back and I worked over at Dean. Started out, cleaning track and shot coal. They drill the holes, and I tamped them with dynamite, and we had a system to fire in the hole, and everybody would stay out of the way, and you'd blast it up, and then they would come in with a cut machine and loader and load everything up. And then I drove a shuttle car for a while. That's when we would go and they'd load us and we'd take it and dump it on the belt line and go out. A good friend of mine, Tom Hayes, from up Dunham, just passed away just a few weeks ago. Went to his funeral. I worked with him, and he was really like a father to me. He helped me and showed me what to do and where to go. And so then after that, we bought this place out down at Dorton to put a store in. And it got to going pretty good, so, and my sinus and allergies were about to kill me working inside in the dust. And so I told them, and if I didn't have anything outside, I needed to get out. And so they were nice about it. I talked to Dave Seguir, everybody knows him. And so I went to the store, and it just kind of snowballed from there, and we put in a little dress shop beside of it, and I ran the service station beside of it for a while. And as time went by, eventually we had a furniture store, and I was in the coal business at one time, and I put in a little restaurant down at Burdine called Sandy's Dream Burger, named after my wife. Wayne Fleming finally bought all that. He owns that now. And so life was pretty good to me.
Well, talk to our viewers a little bit about what you really had at Dorton was what we would call a mom and pop store.
Yes.
And there's not many of those left anymore. Talk to the folks about your years there and the relationships you developed.
Well, we first started out as just a small store, and we just continued to grow.
And about what year was it you started the store at? Do you remember?
Probably around 64,
Okay.
65, somewhere in there. And, it's just kind of taking a chance, really. But then we began to do some business, and at this particular time, you had some bigger stores, but, they weren't quite as advanced as much as they are today. But I started looking at equipment, so I bought a lot of open-type meat coolers and frozen food coolers. And then we started our meat department. Of course, we always had a slicer. We could slice the lunch meat and bacon and bologna and all of the good stuff, and fix pork chops. And I bought a machine to fix your steaks. I forget what you call it. Cube the steak. And we had a real good meat department, and I had the same philosophy as a guy named Sam Walton.
I've heard of him.
I wanted, yeah. Thus brings us Walmart. I said I want to sell cheaper than anybody, but I want to sell more than anybody. And so that was my goal. And this is a story now that was told to me. They selected about 30 items at Jenkins High School. It must have been an economics class or something. And they said, take these items and go to all the different stores and get the price of them. And of course they would ask if it was all right to do that. And I remember they came to my store and they went and priced everything. And I never thought any more about it, but then one of them came and told me, said, we price stores over in Wise and Pound and Neon and Whitesburg and Pikeville and Dorton and Virgie and everywhere, and said, just want you to know that you had the lowest prices of any store in the surrounding area. And I said, well, that's what I'm trying to do, is to sell cheap, give the people a chance to have money for other things too, and still I can make enough money to live on.
When I would assume you didn't have a lot of people bringing in credit cards like they do now.
No, you didn't have credit cards, but we ran what you call credit. I had a place in the back of my store that had selective customers that I had credit. A lot of them were on checks. A lot of them worked in the coal mines, but they all paid like clockwork, and they really just liked to charge their groceries and then pay for them payday. And of course, up front, I had people that would buy on cash. So I had two registers going, and eventually I put 2 registers up front. I eventually went to strictly cash. But people would write checks, and they would pay cash and credit. But credit cards wasn't, they were a thing back then, but they wasn't using them for grocery, mostly for motels and.
Yeah, the technology to swipe the card just wasn't there yet.
That's right.
How about, did you do any special services for the public, like, I don't know, did you deliver groceries maybe, or?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we did. That's how I learned the area. So a lot of people that were retired that really didn't have a means of transportation, and the ones that did had a big family and they didn't have enough room to haul a lot of groceries. So we would deliver the groceries to them and go up in the head of these hollers and see how people lived. And it was work, but it was fun to me. I got acquainted with a lot of people, and that helps build your business. And
now, during this time, I happen to know that you were involved with a couple organizations here in Letcher County. Tell us about the JCs and the Masonic Lodge Hall.
Okay. Buddy Gamble, I probably remember him having Gamble's flower shop, and his sister Pug, she passed away with cancer. He and I went into the Masons at the same time. We went through all the things you have to go through. And of course my father-in-law was a Mason, Ray Mullins, and he enjoyed seeing me go through. And after I became a member, then I started working the chairs. It takes 7 years to go through the chairs, and I worked all that time and became the master of Jenkins Lodge, 856. And in the same year, this was around 1970. In the same year, we started an organization called the JCs, which was for young men between the ages of 18 and 36. And this was a good organization to have community developments and to raise money for all kinds of different charities. The first year, I'd been involved in some of the meetings to get it started, but I came up and was tied up the night that they organized it, and they voted Jay Combs. Everybody knows Jay Combs.
Yes, I see him out all the time.
He was the first president, and I was the vice president, and Tommy Charles from Burdine was the vice president. And so we served, and we were in the top 10 in the state. That goes all the way out to Paducah under the leadership of Jay Combs. So the next year when I took over, Bruce Lucas was one of the vice presidents. And we worked hard, and we finished up in the top 10 again. So Jenkins was on the map as far as the JCs were concerned. And when they was going to run for office, they would always come to Jenkins and say, we need you to back us. Because we had a bunch of great guys that got around and campaigned. And
What did the JCs do?
well, One thing, if you come from Dunham this way, there's a big sign there that says, "Welcome to Jenkins." And when you come in to Burdine down there, there's a big sign that says, "Welcome to Jenkins." We built those two signs. Matter of fact, I had my truck that I haul produce in, and I haul blocks. And we put blocks up and fix up the sign, and had it for all the organizations in Jenkins. Kiwanis Club and Women's Club and so forth could just say "Welcome to Jenkins" and have their names up there. During Christmas, we gave away Christmas baskets to the needy. Probably a miniature thing of what Marlowe Tackett does now, and having his Christmas program every year.
Mm-hmm.
And we would deliver things to families, and if anybody home burned down or anybody needed help in any way, we were always willing to do that. And we took up money for some of the bigger sponsors of different charities. I can't remember all of them now, but we were for developing young men and developing the town and bringing about, we also brought in I believe they called it the Drew Brothers Big Carnival.
I remember that.
Yeah, that gave entertainment to Jenkins, and of course that was a fundraiser, a way we had of making money. And I think we even took up money, I think one time for to send to the Shriners Hospital to help the Masons, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hospital called the Shriners that if you don't have any money, you can take them there, and they'll be treated really with great respect, and it won't cost you a penny once you get in there. That was a big thing in the Masons. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to get in. I wanted to get involved in some of that. But anyway, in the JCs, we were involved in politics and in helping in government growth and so forth. And I went and was elected a regional vice president. So I served 1 year as that. And then kind of my life changed is when I became a Christian. And
what year was that?
That was in 1976. Now, February, the 4th weekend in 1976, I was baptized at the mouth of Little Creek in Pike County. And it wasn't one of the ice cold days, but it was in February, and it was a cold day. So some people said they'd have waited till summer, and I said, well, I couldn't hardly do that.
Oh. Well, at this time, were you having any big problems? Anything just... A lot of people join church and find religion because they're having a hard time and they want to lean on God.
Well, I joined at the old Elkhorn Church at Shelby Gap, and I was there about 5 years. But I'd also went over and started serving the Hemp Hill Church. People around Neon and Jenkins know where that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 1st of August, the next weekend, next Saturday, will make me 30 years.
30 years.
Of being serving the Hemp Hill Church, which I'll get into in a minute and tell you what happened. And so I moved my membership over there. Now, about 5 years ago, we were needing to move because we didn't have much parking and we wasn't really being quite successful over there. So we met up with a little fellow by the name of Danny Hamilton and his cousin Scott Hamilton, and they were coming to join our church. And Danny knew Dr. Fox of the Women's Club at Pikeville. And they had a building and they just couldn't keep it up, and they were really getting ready to condemn it. So he talked to her about us having church there. And so that thus began starting. We called it the Little Hannah Church after my mother's mother, my grandmother I told you about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And she always wanted a church named Little Hannah after her mother. So we started working on it, and it looked like a building that had been bombed in World War II. And it was just awful. But Brother Bob Sparks, Hannah Sue, my first cousin's husband, the Lord really blessed him to work on that, and some of the other brothers worked on it. And the women's club, they helped put in some money. I don't know, but I guess altogether we've if you count labor and all, we've got a good $100,000 in the building, because there was nothing downstairs, and we built a real nice kitchen down there, and we've got wooden ceiling, wooden paneling, and it's just really, really nice. And God has blessed us down there. Our membership has grown. There's a lot of young people coming in. There's some people that's looking to come and be with us now from other denominations and so forth, wanting to come and be a part of us. Because God is blessing us, and we believe that everybody that's been born again is a child of God, no matter what name is over the door. We believe that it's up to God as to where you're going.
So, yeah, you're really happy with your church there in Pikeville?
Oh, I'm tickled to death with it. And we had a wonderful meeting last Sunday, and the people seem to be happy. And so we're bringing up our children in it. Of course, some of them are grandchildren. But it's nice to have a place that you can bring them up, and we can take them downstairs if they don't want to stay upstairs for the whole meeting. And
yeah, that is convenient.
And have, they can have coloring books and so forth, and we've always got somebody that'll take care of them. And we just invite everybody to come, and we just want to see everybody come to the Lord. And it seems like in the times that people are needing something to turn to, because times are not really stable like they used to be. I think the best times were the 50s and 60s.
Well, I appreciate you taking us on this little journey. There's one last thing I want you to talk about. We're a little bit short on time here, so briefly talk about your wife.
I married Sondra Mullins. She was one of my students. And I thought I was teaching her, but evidently she was teaching me. So we fell in love, and we got married. And of course, we lived at the first place we lived was at Jenkins. It's right out from the old Cracy's barber shop. They had an apartment up there for rent. So that year when I taught school, I just got up and walked to school, and then I could come home for lunch. But after that is when I went up to Cincinnati, and then we came back and rented a house at McRoberts when I worked for Bethlehem. And then, of course, we moved to Dorton and bought the store down there, and we worked down there. So we've been married June 15th, made 48 years. And we had, her first son was a fellow by the name of Rick Hall. I think that's him in person right here.
Yes, for the viewers who do not know, a lot of you do know, this is my father, and I'm very proud of him.
And then had a daughter named Cynthia Renee Hall, Cindy. And she lives in Floyd County, up Prestonsburg, a place called Abbott Creek. And she works for probation and parole down there. And then the baby one is James R. Hall, Jamie Hall, and he works with me in our water business. And I have a grandson, the only grandson I have, Jimmy Ray Hall, and he's being the second grade at Burdine this year. And of course, I have a granddaughter, Ashley Hall, and Sandy.
Well, I think it's real important for us to talk about our past and to remember the good times. And you have taken a lot of people, I'm sure, down memory lane. A lot of those names and a lot of those places don't get mentioned as often as they used to. But Is there anything that you'd like to say before we let you go today?
Well, I'm proud of the Letcher County Government Channel. I think it's going to let you get acquainted with a lot of people, know a lot of things that you didn't know about them. And it's also going to keep you informed as to what all of our judges and magistrates and everybody are doing to work to help. And I feel like if this is used in a positive way, that you can get more people involved in helping. You know, they can't do it all by themselves. They need your help. And if you love your community, and I'm sure you do, then you need to take pride in it and get involved in some of the extracurricular activities and help in any way that you can. And I thank you for having me, Rick.
Oh, but you're more than welcome. And I do want to let our viewers know that are thinking, well, where is Studio B? Well, Studio B is in the old Jenkins High School, and that would be Main Street, Jenkins. The building is owned by the Letcher Physical Court. In the particular room that we're in, there was a teacher named Miss Bato. She taught in this very room from 1922 until 1952. She was a very beloved woman. So they call this Miss Bato's room, and I just thought it would be appropriate to take the B from Bato and call this Studio B. So for Rick Hall in Studio B of the Letcher County Government Channel, remember to take care of yourself, and we'll see you again soon.